Leonard Martin, a millionaire, returns home late and finds something unusual in his house. A strange street kid runs up to him and immediately says, "Don't come in." Chicago pulsed in the quiet way it always did after dark. Slow-moving headlights weaving through wet streets, the distant hum of sirens, the occasional blare of a horn. Leonard Martin gripped the steering wheel of his black Audi, guiding it through the late-night traffic with the precision of a man used to control. He barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, tangled in the fatigue of a 14-hour workday, in the weight of numbers and negotiations. His company was growing, but that meant long work days, meetings that stretched into the early hours of the morning, and a phone that never stopped ringing. Sigh. What bothered him most wasn't the work, it was coming home alone. The silence in the car felt heavier than it should. No music, no radio, just the soft hum of the engine and the occasional sigh he hadn't meant to release. He knew what awaited him at home, an empty house. The kind that echoed when you spoke. The kind that held on to a person's absence longer than it should. Rachel's absence. It had been a year since the divorce, yet the space still carried the shape of her. He hated that. Turning onto his street, he reached for the garage remote, but paused. Something was off. The lights were on. His hands tightened on the wheel. A mistake. Maybe. Maybe he'd forgotten. But no. Leonard wasn't careless. His habits were precise, rehearsed. Every night, before leaving for work, he turned everything off. His jaw clenched as he eased the car to a stop in front of the driveway. The rain had slowed to a fine mist, the kind that settled on the skin, like a whisper. He stared at the illuminated windows of his house, a modern two-story nestled in a quiet, upper-class neighborhood. The street was empty, lined with neatly trimmed hedges and parked cars that belonged to people who trusted their alarms to keep them safe. Leonard didn't trust alarms. His eyes moved across the facade, scanning for anything unusual. A shadow, a figure, a movement behind the glass. Nothing. Just the sterile glow of artificial light spilling onto the front lawn. Still, something gnawed at him. His fingers hovered over his phone, debating whether to call security. He was still considering it when a voice cut through the night. "Don't go in." Leonard jerked, his head snapping toward the sound. A boy stood on the sidewalk, just outside the halo of a street lamp. Small, thin, barely a silhouette against the night. The dim light caught the sharp angles of his face, hollow cheeks, dark eyes, an untamed mop of hair damp from the mist. His clothes were too big, layered, worn-down sneakers, scuffed from years of running on pavement. Around his neck hung a pair of old binoculars, the strap frayed at the edges. Leonard studied him. The kid didn't look nervous, didn't fidget, just stood there watching him. The wariness in Leonard's chest deepened. "What did you say?" "Don't go in." His voice was calm, certain, as if he were offering the weather forecast rather than a warning. Leonard exhaled sharply, gripping the steering wheel as he assessed the boy. Homeless, most likely. A runaway, a street kid. But what the hell was he doing here? "Who are you?" "Alex," the boy answered. He didn't move closer, didn't back away, just held his ground. Leonard's instincts prickled. A kid like this didn't just appear out of nowhere. "What do you know about my house, Alex?" "I saw someone go in 20 minutes ago. They haven't come out." Leonard's pulse skipped. Alex's face remained unreadable, but there was something about the way he stood there, the quiet confidence in his tone. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't asking for anything. He was certain. Leonard turned back to the house, eyes narrowing. The lights still burned, unnervingly steady. "You saw them go in?" "Yeah." "And you just happened to be watching?" The boy didn't answer immediately. A flicker of something, Hesitation, calculation, crossed his face. "I watch a lot of things," he said finally. That set Leonard even more on edge. The street was still empty, eerily quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic. His phone was still in his hand, his thumb hovering over his security service's number. He could call them. He could have them sweep the house. But something about this felt wrong. Felt personal. Describe him. Tall, hoodie, moved slow, like he wasn't in a rush, like he knew he wasn't going to get caught. Leonard's grip on the wheel turned his knuckles white. "You're sure he never left?" Alex nodded. The house loomed ahead, the only thing separating Leonard from the unknown. A stranger. An intruder. Someone who was either gone or waiting. He was not a man prone to fear. He thrived on control, on logic. But right now, logic told him to trust his instincts. "Stay here," Leonard muttered, reaching for the glove compartment. Alex let out a small, humorless laugh. "Yeah, if you're about to do something stupid, I'm not sticking around." Leonard barely heard him. His focus was on the gun he pulled from the compartment, the cool weight familiar in his grip. The safety clicked off with a quiet, mechanical snap. Alex didn't flinch. If anything, he looked more interested. "That's serious, huh?" Leonard glanced at him. A kid who wasn't afraid of a gun was a kid who'd seen too much. "Where do you live?" he asked. Alex shrugged. "Nowhere. Around." Leonard didn't have time to unpack that. He turned back to the house, muscles coiled tight. He needed to move. But something stopped him. A thought. "Why did you warn me?" Alex looked at him, rain catching in his lashes. "Because someone should." Leonard hesitated. Then, slowly, he put the gun down and reached for his phone. Leonard Martin studied the boy, his brows drawn in a subtle crease. The kid didn't shift uncomfortably under his gaze, didn't shuffle his feet or look away. He simply stood there, shoulders squared, watching. "I saw someone go in," Alex repeated. His voice was steady, the kind that didn't invite doubt. "He hasn't come out." Leonard exhaled slowly through his nose, forcing his expression to remain neutral. He wasn't a man who jumped to conclusions. Logic dictated that this could be a misunderstanding, a mistaken identity. Maybe Alex was playing a game, spinning a story to keep himself entertained. But instincts, those quiet, insistent instincts, honed by years of dealing with people who operated in shades of grey, told him something different. "Are you sure about that?" Leonard asked, voice measured. Alex nodded. Leonard's gaze flickered to the boy's neck, where a pair of old, battered binoculars hung from a frayed strap. That wasn't a coincidence. "Have you been watching my house?" Alex didn't deny it. He just shrugged. "Saw something weird," he said simply. "Thought you should know." Leonard should have been irritated, should have dismissed the kid outright. Instead, he turned back to the house, his jaw tightening as he scanned the windows. The living room lights cast a warm glow against the darkness, painting the white curtains in soft gold. The back door of the house opened very slowly. Leonard tensed. A man stepped out, dressed all in black and wearing a hood that hid his face. He calmly walked out into the street, ignoring Leonard's car, and got into a dark car parked further ahead. The engine started, and the car disappeared into the night. Leonard felt a lump in his throat. His fingers went instinctively to the phone in his pocket. Security. He could call them, have them clear the place before he stepped inside. Alex tilted his head. "You gonna call someone?" Leonard ignored him as he pressed the number, his eyes locked on the house. "Yeah," he muttered. "I'm calling someone." The line clicked, and a voice answered almost immediately. "This is Westlake Security." "Martin, 225 Harbor Drive," Leonard said, keeping his tone calm. "Possible break-in. Send someone now." "Understood, Mr. Martin. Response team en route. ETA 5 minutes. Leonard lowered the phone, but didn't pocket it. His heartbeat remained steady, but his grip on the device was just a fraction tighter than before. Alex watched him carefully. "So," the boy said, shifting on his heels, "you believe me now?" Leonard didn't answer. He didn't have to. The street was eerily still, the rain having dwindled into a fine mist. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic several blocks away. Even the occasional flicker of headlights down the road did little to break the suffocating stillness. Leonard's mind worked fast. If someone was inside, they either didn't know he had arrived, or they did, and weren't concerned. Neither possibility sat well with him. Alex, for his part, didn't seem particularly rattled by any of this. If anything, he looked almost expectant. "You said you saw something weird." Leonard turned his full attention to the boy. "Explain." Alex hesitated, just for a second. "Couple nights ago, a black sedan was parked down the block. Didn't belong to anyone around here. I know, 'cause I keep track of stuff like that." Leonard's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Just do." Leonard let that slide for now. "Tonight," Alex continued, "I was sitting over there." He nodded toward a cluster of trees near the park entrance. "When I saw the car again, a guy got out, went straight up your driveway, didn't knock, just let himself in." Leonard kept his expression unreadable. "Did you see his face?" Alex shook his head. Hood was up. Moved slow, though. Not like he was in a rush. That detail lodged itself in Leonard's brain. If the intruder wasn't rushing, it meant he wasn't afraid of getting caught. Or worse, he wanted to be there. Leonard checked the time. 3 minutes had passed. Security would be here soon. His attention shifted back to the house. The silhouette from before had vanished. Alex crossed his arms. "If it were me, I wouldn't go in there." Leonard almost smirked at that. "Yeah," he said. "And what would you do?" Alex gave him a look. "Wait for backup, obviously." Leonard huffed a quiet breath through his nose, somewhere between amusement and exasperation. "You always this nosy. You always this slow." Before Leonard could respond, movement caught his eye. Not in the house this time, but at the back gate. A figure. Emerging. The man was dressed in black, hood pulled up to shield his face from the misty air. He moved with a deliberate, unhurried pace, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Leonard stayed perfectly still, watching. The man didn't so much as glance toward the parked Audi or the two figures standing in the shadows. He walked to the sidewalk, turned down the street, and slid into the waiting black sedan. The engine purred to life. The car drifted away, disappearing into the night without urgency. Leonard exhaled slowly. Alex, standing beside him, was the first to break the silence. "That's not normal, right?" Leonard clenched his jaw. "No," he muttered. "It's not." A moment later, the security SUV pulled up. 2 men in dark uniforms stepped out, their movements brisk but controlled. Leonard knew them. Private contractors assigned to patrol the gated neighborhood. The lead officer, Matthews, approached with a clipboard in hand. "Mr. Martin," he greeted. "You reported a break-in." Leonard nodded toward the house. "I need it cleared." Matthews motioned to his partner. They moved efficiently, entering through the front with tactical precision. Leonard and Alex remained outside, waiting. The boy was quiet now, less smug, more contemplative. "So, what now?" he asked after a beat. Leonard didn't answer right away. He just kept staring at the empty street, the distant echo of tires against wet asphalt. "Now," he said eventually, "I find out who the hell that was." Inside, the security team worked quickly. 10 minutes later, Matthews returned, holding something small between his fingers. "House is clear," he reported. "No sign of forced entry, but we did find this." Leonard took the object. It was no bigger than a quarter, sleek and black, with a faint LED light blinking from its side. A tracker. Someone had been watching him. Alex, peering over his shoulder, let out a low whistle. "Damn," he muttered. "Guess it's a good thing you listened to me." Leonard turned the device over in his palm, the weight of the situation settling deep into his chest. Whoever had been inside his house tonight hadn't come to steal. They had come to observe. And that meant only one thing. This wasn't over. The interior of the house was as it had been. The security team moved through each room with efficiency, checking closets, corners, even the spaces beneath the furniture. But they found nothing. No sign of forced entry, no overturned drawers, no missing valuables. Leonard stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watching. The house should have felt familiar, but something about it was wrong now. "House is clear," Matthews announced, stepping back into the foyer. "No intruder, no signs of damage." Leonard's jaw tensed. "Then explain this," the second officer, Torres, cut in. He held up a small black device between two gloved fingers. It was about the size of a coin, sleek, with a tiny blinking LED light. Leonard took it, turning it over in his palm. The weight of it was insignificant. The meaning of it wasn't. "GPS tracker," Torres confirmed. "It was mounted under your desk. Whoever planted it wanted to keep tabs on you." Leonard exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled. "Any idea who?" Matthews asked. Leonard didn't answer immediately. His mind was already running through possibilities. Competitors, old business rivals, people who held grudges. Marcus Owens came to mind, but he hadn't been seen in years. "No," Leonard said finally. "Not yet." Matthews nodded. "We'll sweep the house for more. But if this was the only one, odds are they weren't looking to rob you. They were watching." Leonard said nothing, only turned the tracker between his fingers, feeling its weight. Insignificant, but damning. Behind him, Alex stood just outside the door, watching the exchange with sharp eyes. He had his hands shoved deep in the pockets of his too-big hoodie, but his posture was loose, unconcerned, like he'd seen worse. When the security team finished their final check, Matthews handed Leonard a card. "If anything feels off, call us. We'll send someone right away." Leonard nodded, slipping the card into his pocket. Matthews hesitated for a fraction of a second before adding, "Might be worth filing a police report, Mr. Martin." Leonard met his gaze evenly. "I'll think about it." A beat passed, then the security officers stepped out, their boots thudding softly against the pavement as they made their way to their SUV. The vehicle pulled away, leaving only the quiet hum of the night behind. The silence stretched. Leonard turned the tracker over one last time before slipping it into his pocket. When he finally spoke, his voice was level. "How long have you been watching my house, Alex?" The boy blinked, then tilted his head slightly, like he'd expected the question. "A few days." Leonard's brow furrowed. "Why?" Alex shrugged, shifting his weight. "Because something felt off." "Off how?" "That car I told you about, the black sedan. I saw it a few times, parked down the street, lights off, engine running. Could have been nothing, but I've seen that kind of nothing turn into something before." Leonard studied him. The way Alex spoke, flat, matter-of-fact, no embellishment, told him this wasn't some kid trying to stir up trouble. He'd seen things, understood things. "And you just decided to keep an eye out?" "Yeah." Alex's expression was unreadable. "Figured someone should." A beat of silence. Then, "Why?" Alex smirked faintly. "Because it's interesting." Leonard exhaled sharply, half an amused scoff, half exasperation. He glanced at his house, at the window still glowing faintly from the inside. Then back at the kid, standing there, like this was just another night. "And you just happen to have binoculars." Alex tapped the strap around his neck. "You'd be surprised what people throw away." Leonard narrowed his eyes slightly. The kid was a puzzle, and puzzles, especially the kind that showed up outside your house at the exact right time, weren't things you ignored. He considered pressing further, but let it drop. For now. Instead, his mind wandered to the past. To Rachel. "Your work is going to catch up to you someday, Leonard." She had said it more than once, usually in moments of frustration, of worry, back when she still cared enough to argue about it. Leonard had always brushed it off. "This isn't a movie, Rachel. No one's out to get me." But now, someone was watching. A muscle in his jaw ticked. "That guy," Leonard said, shifting back to the present. "The one who went into my house. You didn't see his face." Alex shook his head. "But you saw how he moved." "Yeah, slow, not scared." Leonard pressed his lips into a thin line. Whoever had done this hadn't been worried about getting caught. That meant one of two things. Either they were careful, or they were confident. Neither was good. Leonard exhaled, forcing his mind to slow down. Think. Plan. Assess. "You got somewhere to be?" he asked. Alex lifted a shoulder in a half shrug. "Not really." Leonard studied him for another long moment. "You hungry?" The boy hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Then, "Depends." "On what?" "If the food's poisoned." Leonard let out a short, incredulous breath. "Jesus, you're paranoid." Alex just smirked. "Survival instinct." Leonard rolled his eyes, but motioned toward the car. "Come on." Alex eyed him for a moment, as if weighing his options, then stepped forward, sliding into the passenger seat. As Leonard started the car, the glow from the house faded in the rearview mirror. Somewhere in the city, someone was watching, and Leonard intended to find out who. The rain had stopped. Leonard drove through the heart of Chicago, past the river, past the buildings whose glass facades stretched high into the sky like silent, towering sentinels. Rachel lived in one of those buildings now. He hadn't been to her apartment before. When they were married, they had lived in a townhouse on the quieter side of the city, close enough to the action, but still private. Now, she was in a high-rise downtown, in a place that overlooked everything but belonged to no one. Leonard pulled into the parking garage, cutting the engine. For a moment he just sat there, staring at the wheel, feeling the weight of the night settle deeper into his chest. Alex had stayed behind. Now, standing in the mirrored elevator, he adjusted his jacket, watching his reflection, trying to ignore the faint feeling of nostalgia curling at the edges of his mind. When the doors slid open, he stepped into a hallway lined with pristine white walls and doors that all looked the same. Rachel's world was orderly, structured. He knocked. A few seconds later, the door cracked open. Rachel stood there, barefoot, wearing a loose sweater that fell off one shoulder, her hair tied back in a way that made her look younger than she was. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable when she saw him. "Leonard." He exhaled through his nose. "Rachel." A pause. Then, sighing, she stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the ghost of a life. They once had, the apartment smelled like lavender and old memories. It was decorated the way she had always preferred. Minimalist, tasteful, modern, cold in a way. Leonard scanned the space, instinctively. The coffee table was stacked with books. A half-empty glass of wine sat beside a laptop. A single pair of heels was neatly placed by the entrance. It was a home, but not a lived-in one. Rachel crossed her arms, leaning against the kitchen counter. "You want a drink?" "No." She studied him for a long moment. "What do you want, Leonard?" He didn't answer immediately, just reached into his pocket and pulled out the GPS tracker, placing it on the counter between them. Rachel looked at it, then back at him. She didn't look surprised. "Someone planted that in my house," he said. "They weren't robbing me. They were watching." Rachel exhaled, rubbing her temple. "Okay." Leonard frowned. "That's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Maybe start with whether you know who the hell would do something like this." Rachel hesitated. Not long, but long enough. And Leonard knew. "Rachel." His voice was sharp, measured. "Do you know something?" Her eyes flickered. She shifted her weight, looking past him for a moment before finally answering. "Marcus Owens." The name landed between them like a dropped glass, shattering the last shred of normalcy in the room. Leonard stilled. "Marcus Owens," he repeated slowly, as if saying it out loud might make more sense. Rachel nodded. "That doesn't make sense," Leonard muttered, shaking his head. "He's been gone for years. I haven't heard his name since—" "Since you ruined his life," Rachel finished, voice quiet, but pointed. Leonard's jaw clenched. "I didn't ruin his life. He got caught stealing from my company. And you made sure no one would ever hire him again," Rachel added. Leonard stared at her. "He did that to himself." Rachel sighed. "Maybe, but that doesn't mean he sees it that way." Silence. Leonard took a step back, running a hand through his hair. "How do you know it's him?" Rachel hesitated again. "He reached out to me," she admitted. Leonard's pulse slowed. "What?" "A few months ago. I didn't think much of it at first. He said he wanted to talk, closure or something. Then he started asking questions. About you, about where you lived, if you still had security. I thought he was just bitter. But now—" She gestured to the tracker. "Now I think he was planning something." Leonard's fingers curled into fists at his sides. "Why the hell didn't you tell me?" Rachel's expression tightened. "Because I didn't know he was serious." Leonard scoffed, turning away, dragging a hand over his jaw. Marcus Owens. Of all the people, what did he say exactly? Rachel swallowed, folding her arms. "That you took everything from him. That you didn't just fire him. You destroyed his future. He said he wanted justice." Leonard exhaled slowly. "No," he murmured. "He wants revenge." Rachel didn't argue. A long silence stretched between them. Finally she spoke. "Leonard." He looked at her. "Be careful." For a second, just a second, he saw something familiar in her expression. Rachel who used to worry about him. The Rachel who used to care. But Rachel was gone. Leonard nodded once. "Yeah," he said. "I will." And then, without another word, he walked out the door. Back into the night. The air was cooler now. The city still buzzed around him, but it felt distant, like background noise to something bigger. Marcus Owens. Leonard slid into his car, gripping the wheel a little too tightly. It had been years. He had assumed Marcus had moved on. Clearly he hadn't. The GPS tracker sat on the dashboard, blinking faintly in the dark. Somewhere out there, Marcus was watching. Leonard started the engine. If Marcus wanted a war, he was about to get one. The night stretched long as Leonard Martin drove toward the edge of the city. The skyline shrank behind him, swallowed by darkness and rain. He had left Rachel's apartment without another word, but her voice lingered in his head. "He still blames you, Leonard. Said you ruined his life." Marcus Owens. A name that had once meant nothing more than an ambitious employee in his company. A man who played the game, climbed the ranks, then got too greedy. And now he was back. But why now? Leonard needed answers. So he went to the only person he trusted to find them. Daniel Burke's apartment was in a part of town that most people avoided after dark. Not dangerous, just forgotten. Rows of old brownstones, narrow streets, the kind of place where landlords didn't fix leaks and the grocery stores had bars on the windows. Leonard knocked twice, waited. After a few seconds, the door swung open, revealing a man in his early 40s with tired eyes and 2-day-old stubble. Daniel Burke looked exactly the same as the last time Leonard had seen him, like someone who worked too much, drank too much coffee, and had given up on shaving regularly. "Jesus," Daniel muttered. "You look like hell." "Good to see you too." Leonard stepped inside. The apartment smelled like burnt coffee and wires. Monitors covered one wall, screens casting a cold glow over the cluttered desk. Half-eaten takeout containers, circuit boards, cables snaking across the floor. It looked like the inside of a machine rather than a home. Daniel collapsed into his chair with a sigh, rubbing his eyes. "All right, Martin. What do you need?" Leonard pulled the GPS tracker from his pocket, setting it on the desk. "Someone broke into my house." That got Daniel's attention. He leaned forward, picking up the device, turning it over in his hands. "This was under your desk." Leonard nodded. Daniel rolled his chair closer to the desk, plugging the tracker into a small device. The screen beside him blinked to life, lines of code scrolling too fast for Leonard to follow. "Let's see where this little guy's been." Leonard crossed his arms, watching. Daniel worked in silence for a few minutes, typing, frowning, muttering under his breath. Then, "Huh." Leonard didn't like that sound. "What?" Daniel tapped the screen. "This tracker isn't new. Whoever planted it has been monitoring your location for at least 3 months." Leonard's stomach tightened. "And?" Daniel exhaled sharply, scrolling through the data. "And I traced the relay point. The signal bounces around, but guess where it ends up?" Leonard already knew the answer before Daniel said it. "Marcus Owens." Daniel turned, giving him a sharp look. "That name means something to you." Leonard didn't respond immediately. He took a slow breath, trying to ignore the feeling creeping up his spine. "He used to work for me," he said finally. "I fired him for fraud." Daniel's eyebrows lifted. "And now he's watching you." "Seems like it." Daniel turned back to his screen, typing quickly. "Let's see if our friend Owens has been busy lately." More scrolling, more numbers flashing by. Then, Daniel let out a low whistle. "Well, damn." "What?" Daniel leaned back, folding his arms. "Your boy Marcus has been making moves. Financial moves." Leonard frowned. "Explain." "He went off the grid after you fired him, right? No jobs, no records, nothing. But over the last few months, money has been flowing through shell companies. Small amounts at first, then bigger. Someone's funding him." Leonard's jaw tightened. "Who?" Daniel shook his head. "No name yet, but I can tell you this. He's not doing this alone." Leonard exhaled slowly. This wasn't just an ex-employee holding a grudge. This was something else. Leonard left Daniel's apartment just past midnight. The city was quieter now, streets slick with rain, neon signs reflecting in puddles. He was halfway to his car when his phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered. "Martin." A pause. Then, a voice. Low, calm. "You shouldn't have gone looking." Leonard stopped walking, his fingers curled tighter around the phone. "Who is this?" A quiet chuckle. "You already know." Leonard's pulse was steady, controlled. He glanced around. The street was empty, but suddenly it didn't feel empty enough. "What do you want?" "I just wanted to remind you, Martin." The voice continued, smooth, confident. "This isn't over." The line went dead. Leonard lowered the phone slowly. The rain fell in a soft drizzle, cool against his skin. Marcus Owens was out there, watching. And now, he knew Leonard was watching back. The city pulsed with restless energy as Leonard Martin drove back toward his house. The phone call still echoed in his ears. The voice, low, calm, deliberate, had barely needed to say anything at all. This isn't over. He knew what that meant. Whoever was watching him, whoever had been inside his house, wasn't done. And now, after tracing the GPS tracker back to Marcus Owens, it was clear that this wasn't just some random break-in. This was personal. Leonard's fingers flexed against the steering wheel. Alex, the street kid who had warned him, sat in the passenger seat, watching the road ahead, like he was expecting something to jump out of the darkness. He hadn't said much since they left Daniel's place, but Leonard could feel his sharp gaze flicker toward him every so often. That call, Alex said finally, breaking the silence, sounded like bad news. Leonard exhaled through his nose. It was. You gonna tell me who it was? Someone who wants me to know I'm being watched. Alex scoffed. Well, no shit. They left a damn tracker in your house. Leonard glanced at him, but Alex was staring out the window, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You ever hear the name Marcus Owens? Leonard asked. Alex shrugged. Maybe. Why? He used to work for me. I fired him for stealing from my company. Looks like he still holds a grudge. Alex let out a low whistle. Damn. So this is, what, revenge? Leonard didn't answer right away, because it wasn't just that. People who wanted revenge didn't plant trackers under your desk. They didn't sit in cars with the engine running, waiting, watching. They didn't call you just to say, this isn't over. Number this was something bigger, and Leonard had the distinct feeling that he was already 3 steps behind. The phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Leonard's pulse remained steady as he answered. Martin. There was a pause, then a different voice, rougher, less composed than the last. Listen carefully, the man said. We have a kid. Leonard went still. What? A kid, the voice repeated. 10 years old, brown hair, blue eyes, was playing near the park earlier today. We have him. Leonard's jaw tightened. And you expect me to do what about it? You know exactly what. You're going to pay. $500,000. Cash. No cops. No games. Leonard's grip on the phone tightened. And if I don't? A chuckle, low, amused. Then you'll be hearing about a body in the river tomorrow morning. The line went dead. The silence that followed was suffocating. Alex sat forward. What the hell was that? Leonard didn't answer right away. His mind was already moving, piecing things together. A child, a ransom demand, $500,000, no cops. He exhaled sharply. Someone's trying to make me desperate. And is it working? Alex asked. Leonard gave him a look. What do you think? Leonard pulled the car to the side of the road, pressing his fingers to his temples, forcing his thoughts to align. He needed to move fast. If Marcus was behind this, then this wasn't just about money. It was about power. Control. He turned to Alex. You still got those eyes on the street? Alex raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, you watch people. You notice things. The kid hesitated, then gave a small nod. Yeah, what about it? I need information fast. Alex frowned. On what? That black sedan, the one you saw before. I need to know where it's been since last night. Alex considered that for a moment. I might know a guy. Good. Leonard put the car back in gear. Then let's go meet him. The man Alex led him to was older, dressed in layers that didn't quite match, his fingers twitching slightly as he smoked a cigarette outside a rundown diner. Lenny, Alex said. This is Rick. Rick looked Leonard up and down, then smirked. You a cop? Do I look like a cop? Leonard asked flatly. Rick exhaled smoke through his nose. Guess not. I need information, Leonard said, on a car. Yeah. Rick took another drag of his cigarette. What's in it for me? Leonard pulled a crisp $100 bill from his wallet, holding it up. Rick eyed it, then shrugged. All right, what kind of car? Black sedan, tinted windows, been sitting near Harbour Drive the last few nights. Rick's expression flickered, just for a second. I might have seen something. Leonard waited. Rick exhaled slowly. Car like that ain't just watching one house. Been parked all over the neighborhood. Different spots, different angles. Like someone's looking for something specific. Leonard's stomach tightened. And? Rick hesitated. Couple hours ago, I saw it pull out of here. Had a kid in the back seat. Leonard's blood ran cold. Where? Rick shook his head. Didn't see. But it was heading toward the west side. Leonard turned to Alex. Find out where that car went. Alex nodded, already pulling out his phone. The next hour passed in a blur. Alex called in favors. Leonard called Daniel, who hacked into traffic cameras. Bit by bit, the pieces came together. The car had stopped at a warehouse near the industrial district. It was still there. Leonard pulled up the location on his phone, staring at the map. Then he turned to Alex. Stay here. Alex scowled. Yeah, not happening. This isn't your fight, kid. Yeah? Well, someone's got to watch your back. Leonard sighed. Fine, but if things go south, you run. Got it. Alex didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said enough. The warehouse. The building was old, abandoned. A rusted sign hung crookedly over the entrance. Leonard parked a block away, cutting the engine. He and Alex moved silently through the shadows, reaching the side of the warehouse. A voice carried from inside. Boss says we wait for the call. And if the money doesn't come, then we make an example out of the kid. Leonard's hands clenched into fists. He pulled out his gun. Then he moved. The night was still, the air thick with the lingering scent of rain and rust. Leonard Martin crouched low behind a stack of wooden crates, his breath measured, his grip firm around the gun in his hand. Beside him, Alex pressed himself against the cold metal of the warehouse wall, eyes darting toward the dimly lit interior. From their vantage point, they could see the inside of the warehouse through a gap in the rusted corrugated panels. The space was vast, nearly empty, except for a few scattered crates and a flickering overhead light that swung gently from a long wire. And in the center of it all, the boy. Tied to a chair, his small frame rigid, his face streaked with dried tears, eyes wide with terror. Leonard's jaw clenched. They had the kid. He turned to Alex. You stay in the car. Alex smirked. Yeah, no. Leonard exhaled sharply. This isn't a game. I know, Alex said, unbuckling his seatbelt. That's why I'm coming. Leonard should have argued, should have shut the kid down. But something in Alex's expression, steady, unblinking, reminded him too much of himself. Stay close, and do exactly what I say. Alex grinned. Wasn't planning on freelancing. Leonard slipped the gun from the glove compartment, checked the clip, and shoved it into his holster. Then they moved. The warehouse was barely standing, its corrugated metal walls rusting at the edges. A single overhead light flickered near the entrance, throwing sharp, jagged shadows onto the cracked concrete. Leonard pressed his back to the wall, listening. Nothing. No voices. No movement. Just the low hum of electricity from somewhere inside. He gestured for Alex to stay put, then eased the door open. The smell hit him first. Stale air, mildew, something metallic. Two men stood nearby, both armed. One of them leaned casually against a steel beam, spinning a switchblade between his fingers. The other paced back and forth, checking his watch. Then, a third figure emerged from the shadows. Leonard inhaled sharply. Marcus Owens. He gestured for Alex to stay put, then eased the door open. The smell hit him first. Stale air, mildew, something metallic. A single chair in the center of the room. A boy, bound at the wrists and ankles, his breathing sharp and panicked. His clothes were dirty, his face streaked with dried tears. Leonard scanned the room. No sign of Marcus, no sign of anyone. Too easy. Alex slipped in behind him, eyes sweeping the space. "This feels wrong," he whispered. Leonard nodded. It was wrong. He moved forward, cautiously, step by step, gun raised. The closer he got to the kid, the stronger the feeling in his gut. The boy's eyes darted up, locking onto him. "Trap," he gasped. Leonard spun. Too late. A shadow moved from the far corner, quick, precise. "Marcus?" Leonard barely had time to react before a shot rang out, metal sparking as a bullet ricocheted off the floor inches from his foot. "Drop it!" Marcus's voice rang out, calm as ever. Leonard turned, gun still raised. Marcus stepped into the light, gun in hand, aimed directly at Leonard's chest. He looked older, sharper. His face was lean, his eyes hollow but burning with something Leonard had seen before, a man who had nothing to lose. "I should have known you'd come looking," Marcus mused. "You never could let things go. You kidnapped a kid, Marcus." Leonard's voice was steady, controlled. "He's collateral," Marcus shrugged. "You of all people should understand that." Leonard's jaw tightened. "This isn't about money." "No," Marcus admitted. "It's about you. About making sure you finally feel what it's like to have something ripped away." Leonard's grip tightened on his gun. "You don't want to do this." Marcus laughed. A real laugh. "You still think you're the one in control." Leonard's mind worked fast, mapping the exits, calculating distance. Marcus was alone. No backup. But he was unpredictable, and that made him dangerous. The gun in Marcus's hand didn't waver. "Put it down, Martin." Leonard didn't move. Then, a sound. Small, barely noticeable. But Marcus noticed. His gaze flicked, just for a second, toward Alex. And that was enough. Alex moved first. A quick shuffle of feet, then a rusted wrench flew across the room, crashing against a stack of crates. Marcus flinched. Leonard didn't hesitate. He lunged. A struggle, a quick, brutal tangle of limbs, fists, the metallic scrape of a gun skidding across the floor. Marcus fought hard, but Leonard fought harder. Years of control, of power, of knowing exactly where to strike. A solid punch to the ribs, a sharp twist of the wrist, then a crack. Marcus crumpled to the ground, gasping. Leonard stood over him, breathing hard, gun back in his grip. Alex stepped forward, looking unimpressed. "That was dramatic." Leonard ignored him, turning to the kid still tied to the chair. "You okay?" he asked, kneeling. The boy nodded quickly, eyes still wide with fear. Leonard started working on the ropes. Then, sirens, flashing red and blue against the metal walls. Alex let out a low whistle. "Guess you called the cops after all." Leonard exhaled, standing. "No," he muttered. "Daniel did." He turned back to Marcus, who was now clutching his ribs, glaring. "This isn't over," Marcus spat. Leonard stared down at him. "Yeah," he said coldly, "it is." The police stormed in seconds later. Officers swarmed Marcus, hauling him up, cuffing him. The kid was taken to safety, trembling but unharmed. Leonard and Alex stood in the doorway, watching as Marcus was shoved into the back of a patrol car. "So," Alex said after a moment, "that's it?" Leonard didn't answer, because something about this felt unfinished. Marcus had money, he had resources, he had backing. Leonard knew better than to believe this was over. Alex nudged him. "What now?" Leonard exhaled. "Now? He glanced at the flashing lights, at the chaos still unfolding. Now, we figure out what's really going on. The sirens still wailed in the distance, their echoes bouncing off the rusted walls of the warehouse. The scene in front of Leonard Martin was chaotic. Flashing lights, uniformed officers swarming the space, Marcus Owens being shoved into the back of a patrol car. And yet, in the middle of it all, Leonard felt something unsettling. A sense that this wasn't the victory it was supposed to be. He stood still, his shoulders rigid, watching as Marcus lifted his head, blood trailing from his temple, a smirk twisting his swollen lip. "You think this is over?" Marcus rasped, his voice hoarse but steady. "You don't even know what you've walked into." Leonard didn't flinch. "You lost, Marcus." Marcus chuckled. "You still don't get it." He leaned forward slightly, just enough for his voice to lower. "There are more of us. People who've been waiting to watch you fall. You're just getting started, Martin. And trust me," he grinned, teeth red with blood, "they don't make mistakes like I did." The words sat like a weight on Leonard's chest, because they weren't just empty threats. They felt like a promise. The chaos settled over the next hour. The kidnapped boy, whose name Leonard learned was Noah, was taken away by an officer, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Leonard watched from a distance, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Leonard felt Alex shift beside him. "He's smiling," the kid muttered. Leonard exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I see it." Then Marcus turned his head, locking eyes with Leonard through the car's window. His grin widened just slightly, enough to send something sharp curling in Leonard's stomach. And then he mouthed something. Slow, deliberate. "This isn't over." The officer in the driver's seat slammed the door shut, and the squad car pulled away, leaving nothing but a trail of flashing lights in the night. Leonard ran a hand down his face, inhaling deeply. The night felt heavier now, like the weight of what had just happened had finally settled onto his shoulders. "You look like someone just told you Santa Claus isn't real," Alex said, stuffing his hands into the pockets of his hoodie. Leonard shot him a look. "That was too easy," he muttered. "Easy?" Alex scoffed. "Dude, we just walked into a death trap, fought a psychopath, and barely made it out. That felt pretty damn hard to me." Leonard didn't answer right away. His mind was already turning, unraveling the pieces. Marcus wasn't a mastermind. He was good, sure, cunning, dangerous, but he wasn't the kind of man who had the patience for a long game. He was reactionary. He lashed out, burned bridges, and always had an exit plan when things went south. So why had he just let himself get caught? Alex was watching him now, eyes sharper than they had any right to be for a kid his age. "You don't think this is over?" It wasn't a question. Leonard let out a slow breath. "No." Alex was quiet for a second, then shrugged. "So, what?" "There's a bigger boss." Leonard didn't want to say yes, didn't want to acknowledge the sinking feeling in his gut. But then he remembered Marcus's last words. "There are others who want you to fall." It hadn't been a threat. It had been a statement of fact. Marcus wasn't acting alone. He was part of something bigger. Leonard's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. "Daniel." "Tell me you have something," Leonard said, answering. "I have something," Daniel replied. "You're not going to like it." "Go on." There was a pause, the sound of a keyboard clicking in the background. "Marcus's money. Remember how I told you it was coming from offshore accounts?" "Yeah." "I traced one of them. The shell company that was funneling money to him. It's tied to a name you might recognize." Leonard's grip on the phone tightened. "Who?" Daniel hesitated. "Jonathan Pierce." Leonard stilled. Pierce. He hadn't heard that name in years. A businessman, a ghost in the corporate world. The kind of man who made things disappear. Money, people, problems. He didn't just own companies, he owned people. And if Pierce was involved, this was a whole different kind of war. Leonard inhaled slowly, forcing his pulse to steady. How deep is he in this? Don't know yet, Daniel admitted, but I can find out. Do it. As Leonard hung up, Alex raised an eyebrow. Bad news. The worst kind, Leonard muttered. Alex tilted his head. You gonna tell me, or do I have to play detective? Leonard considered his next words carefully. Marcus wasn't working alone. Shocker, Alex deadpanned. The man funding him, Jonathan Pierce. He doesn't do anything without a reason. Alex's expression shifted, the joking exterior flickering just slightly. So, if this guy was backing Marcus, and Marcus just got locked up, that means... Leonard finished the thought for him. Someone else is about to take his place. The kid exhaled through his nose. Well, shit. Leonard's jaw tightened. Yeah. Silence stretched between them, the kind that carried weight, unspoken but undeniable. Then Alex shifted. So, what's the move? Leonard glanced at the distant skyline, the city still alive, still moving. This wasn't over, not even close. We don't wait for them to come to us. He looked back at Alex. We go to them. The city never truly slept. Even in the quietest hours before dawn, its pulse remained steady. A constant hum of engines in the distance, the occasional blare of a siren cutting through the night. But for Leonard Martin, the world had narrowed to a single point of focus. Jonathan Pierce. Marcus had been a pawn. That much was clear now. He was reckless, impulsive, a man filled with rage, but lacking the discipline to be truly dangerous. No, the real threat had been standing behind him all along. And Jonathan Pierce. He didn't make mistakes. He was a man who had built empires in the shadows, who moved money, power, and people like pieces on a chessboard. So when Daniel had traced the money funneling into Marcus's operation back to Pierce, Leonard had known this wasn't over. It was just beginning. Leonard stood in the dim glow of his office, fingers curled around a glass of whiskey he hadn't touched. Across from him, Alex sat on the edge of the couch, tossing a lighter between his hands, restless energy rolling off him in waves. So, what's the play? Alex asked. Leonard took a slow breath. Daniel's tracking Pierce now. He's been careful, but not careful enough. Alex raised an eyebrow. You think he knows we're on to him? He will soon. A pause. Then Alex smirked. Think he'll run? Leonard swirled the whiskey in his glass. Men like Pierce don't run. They disappear. And that was what worried him. Pierce wasn't just some businessman with dirty hands. He was a ghost. The kind of man who wiped his existence from the record before trouble ever reached his door. If he knew Leonard was looking, he'd already be making arrangements to vanish. Leonard couldn't let that happen. Daniel's voice crackled over the phone. Got him. Leonard straightened, setting his untouched whiskey down. Where? Pier 17, private airstrip. He's booked a jet, leaves in an hour. Leonard's jaw tightened. He was running. Send me... everything. Already did. Leonard hung up. Alex stood. Tell me we're going after him. Leonard grabbed his gun. We're going after him. Alex grinned. Now we're talking. Pier 17 was quiet, the kind of place that existed off the books, where men like Pierce could come and go without a trace. The jet was already on the tarmac, its engines humming softly in the night air. Leonard parked a block away, killing the headlights. We don't have much time, he muttered. Alex peered out the window. You got a plan, or are we winging it? We get inside, we make sure he doesn't leave. Simple. Right, Alex deadpanned. Because nothing ever goes wrong with a simple plan. Leonard smirked slightly. Stick close. They moved quickly, slipping past the fence, staying low. The hangar loomed ahead, floodlights casting long shadows against the pavement. 2 guards stood near the entrance, their hands resting on their holsters. Leonard's grip tightened on his gun. "You distract," he murmured. Alex grinned. "Love that for me?" The kid didn't hesitate. A rock flew across the pavement, clattering loudly against the metal siding. The guards stiffened, turning toward the noise. Leonard moved, fast, precise. One went down before he even had time to register the movement. The second spun, reaching for his weapon. Leonard's fist connected with his jaw. The man crumpled. Alex whistled. "Remind me not to piss you off." Leonard ignored him, stepping over the unconscious men and slipping inside. Pierce was already boarding the jet. Leonard's heart pounded as he raised his gun. "Pierce!" The older man paused on the stairs, his polished shoes gleaming under the cabin lights. Slowly, he turned and smiled. "Ah, Mr. Martin." His voice was smooth, almost amused. "You always had a way of showing up at the worst possible moment." Leonard didn't lower his gun. "You're not going anywhere." Pierce exhaled, shaking his head. "And here I thought you understood how the world works." He gestured subtly, footsteps behind them. Leonard turned, more guards. Alex swore under his breath. Pierce chuckled. "You're a smart man, Leonard. You should know by now, this isn't a fight you can win." Leonard kept his breathing even. "You made a mistake." Pierce tilted his head. "And what mistake was that?" The sound of tires screeching in the distance, sirens, flashing lights. Alex grinned. "Calling backup." The cops swarmed the airstrip in seconds, guns raised, orders shouted. Pierce's calm exterior faltered just slightly. Leonard stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You should have disappeared sooner." Pierce's lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't over, Martin." Leonard smirked. "That's what the last guy said." The officers moved in, grabbing Pierce, forcing him onto his knees. As they cuffed him, Leonard exhaled. It was over. For now. It was nearly morning by the time Leonard and Alex returned home. Alex slumped onto the couch, stretching out like he lived there. Leonard leaned against the counter, rubbing his temples. "You ever gonna tell me why you do this?" Alex asked suddenly. Leonard looked at him. "Do what?" "Play hero." Leonard didn't answer right away. Instead, his gaze drifted toward the hallway, toward the spare room, where Noah slept. The kid had no family, no home. He was too young to understand the kind of scars that came from being abandoned. The next morning, the apartment wasn't quieter than usual. Leonard stood in the kitchen, staring at the coffee maker as it gurgled softly, filling the air with the scent of dark roast. It was the same routine as every morning: coffee, a glance at the newspaper he never really read, then straight into his day. But today was different, because today there was someone else here. From the hallway, he could hear the faint sound of shuffling feet, a hesitant step, then another. Noah. The kid had barely spoken since they pulled him out of that warehouse. Even after the paramedics cleared him, even after the police confirmed he had no family, he had stayed quiet. He was still trying to process it all, and Leonard understood that. Across the counter, Alex was already awake, leaning back in one of the chairs, chewing lazily on a piece of toast. He had adjusted faster than the boy, probably because his life had always been about adjusting. Noah, though, he was different. The kid stopped at the threshold of the kitchen, hovering like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to step inside. Leonard turned, sliding a plate toward him. "Eggs. Toast. Eat." Noah hesitated. Then, slowly, he moved forward, pulling himself up onto the chair. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were the occasional clink of silverware, the hum of the city outside. Then, Alex broke the silence. "So," he said casually, mouth half full. "What now?" Leonard sipped his coffee, staring down at the dark liquid. "Now," he repeated. "Yeah. Now that Marcus is locked up, and you've got an orphan in your kitchen. What's the game plan?" Leonard didn't answer right away. He hadn't thought that far ahead. Not really. Noah kept his head down, eating in small, careful bites, like he was afraid the food would disappear if he didn't pace himself. Alex gestured toward him with his fork. "You keeping him?" Leonard frowned. "He's not a dog, Alex." Alex smirked. "Yeah, but he's got nowhere else to go, and neither do I for that matter. So, why not?" Leonard set his coffee down. "The kid should be with social services." Noah flinched slightly at that. It was barely noticeable, but Leonard caught it. Alex did too. "Yeah?" Alex said, voice quieter now. "You think he wants that?" Leonard exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. This wasn't his responsibility. He wasn't built for this. He wasn't a father, wasn't the kind of person who was supposed to look after anyone but himself. And yet, he looked at Noah again. The kid was gripping his fork tightly, shoulders drawn in. Not crying, not saying a word, just waiting to be told where he was going next, waiting to be sent somewhere else. Leonard felt something in his chest tighten. Rachel's voice drifted back into his mind, a memory from years ago. "One day, Leonard, you're going to wake up and realize you don't have anyone left." He had scoffed at the time, brushed it off. But now, sitting in his kitchen, staring at a boy who had no one, a street kid who had wormed his way into his life, he wondered if she had been right. Alex leaned back, stretching. "Look, I get it. You're a lone wolf, Mr. Independent. Blah, blah. But let's be real here. You don't actually want to send him away." Leonard met his gaze. "And why do you care?" Alex shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe I'm curious. Maybe I just want to see if you'll do the right thing." Leonard scoffed. "You're a real pain in the ass, you know that?" "Yeah," Alex said, grinning. "But I'm your pain in the ass now." Leonard turned back to Noah. The boy was staring at his plate, still not looking up. "Kid," Leonard said. Slowly, Noah lifted his eyes. "You want to stay?" Noah swallowed. Then, barely above a whisper, "Yes." Leonard let out a slow breath. There it was. A decision he hadn't planned on making, and yet it felt right. Later that night, Leonard stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. Behind him, Alex was sprawled on the couch, flipping through TV channels. Noah had fallen asleep in the spare bedroom. His room now, Leonard supposed. It felt strange. The apartment didn't feel empty. There were dishes in the sink that weren't his. The air carried the faint sound of breathing that wasn't just his own. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't alone. Leonard exhaled, running a hand through his hair. This wasn't what he had expected, but maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what he needed.